Hello, all my world history students. Today is Monday, so happy Monday and good morning or evening, depending on when you wake up. Uh, I hope you all had a good weekend and actually went outside. That's always a good thing to get some sun, get outside, and get ready for the week of school ahead. So, today we're going to talk about the causes of World War One. We are going to talk about the main causes of World War One. And main in this situation is actually in quotations, so you'll see why. So let's get started. So this is a map of the world at this point in time, showing you the Allied Central Power and then the neutral powers during World War One. But today we're actually going to start talking about the start of World War One and why they actually went to war. At this point in time, it wasn't called World War One. It was going to be called the Great War. Obviously, they didn't know that there was going to be a second World War, so they didn't name it World War One, hoping for a World War Two. It is just the name that they gave it later on, so it's called the Great War. When you hear about the Great War, they're referring to World War One, but it was named way later on because of World War Two. So this is going to be between 1914 and 1919, and it is going to alter the 20th century for all of the world. It is going to be a huge bloody conflict. It's going to be the biggest the world has ever seen, especially on a scale of land. Typically, when we talked about the world wars, the land would be Mongolia fighting China, or Russia fighting Germany, but now we're talking about a huge, almost full war effort here. So you can see all of the green countries here. Those are the only ones that are going to be neutral in this. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about the main causes to World War One. So why I said main in quotation marks is because the words what we're about to talk about, the main causes actually spell out main. So MAIN. So let's go ahead and look at those. We have militarism. So the advancement and having of military and having a military that's always ready. We have alliances. So we'll talk a lot about the alliances and the different sides that people were on during World War One. We have imperialism, which we just talked about. It goes hand in hand with the Industrial Revolution, which makes a huge difference. And then we have nationalism. So we'll talk about all of these real quick so that you can understand the main causes of World War One. So first we're going to talk about militarism. So because of the Industrial Revolution, we had this huge advancement in military. So we were able to mass produce things on like large scales. So guns, uniforms. People were living these way better lives because they had industries and factories that could pump out a huge amount of things at once. And this increased the military tenfold, especially for these nations that had enough money and economics to allow them to grow. So the Europeans really did believe that to be an amazing and great nation, you have to have a super strong military. I think that nowadays we still have the same mindset. I know here in America, we really pride ourselves in how large our military is, especially if you look at how much we spend on it. You would see that the United States really prides themselves in keeping a large military. So not much has changed, but this is going to be one of the leading causes to World War One. There was a huge arm race, especially between Britain and Germany. Britain trying to keep the greatest, and they really wanted the title of having the greatest navy. And Germany had a huge amount of foot soldiers, and their citizens were ecstatic. It increased patriotism amazingly because people saw this huge military as being a better nation. So not only is militarism having a large army, but it's always keeping that army prepared for war. So that army is on red alert all the time, and if they need to, they will go fight. So that is one of the key concepts to militarism. The next is alliances. So we see a huge amount of rivalries in Europe, especially. And these are the strongest nations at this point in time. So these European nations, because of the Industrial Revolution, were so strong at this point in time. And it is going to create these crazy alliances between different people trying to do different things and unite different people groups. So we have Germany, Italy, and Hungary made an alliance. We have England, France, and Russia that are forming an alliance. And the rest of the world at this point in time is kind of a neutral colony, or they're doing everything for themselves. The next thing we have is imperialism. So this is the I in main. Imperialism, we talked about it pretty extensively last week, or at least I hope you guys saw the video on imperialism. If you didn't, go ahead and go check that out. For imperialism, we had these nations that were fighting to kind of conquer different countries or colonies throughout the world. So there was a huge fight for natural resources because of the Industrial Revolution, and that led to imperialism. And imperialism is going to lead to a lot of conflicts between nations thinking that they own other countries. So especially again between Britain and France and Germany, all of these really powerful European nations who took over other countries, that imperialism is going to lead to a lot of conflict and struggle of wanting these different colonies. So the competition for these colonies was insane. The last thing is nationalism. So that's the last piece of the puzzle here, is actually nationalism. And it is going to lead to a huge amount of rivalry. So there was a huge amount of nationalism for being European. So people thought, man, if you're European, you are the best. But there was this real struggle between the European nations too, this kind of balance between these nations that made it really hard to keep that balance. So as you can imagine, because of the increase in military, there was this camaraderie between the European nations, but there was this rivalry too. You were trying to obtain power through them, but you were also trying to rival them at the same time, which is a really interesting concept where you're trying to overpower a nation, each other as nations, but you're also trying to remain neutral in this balance of power and try to maintain that struggle of power. So that's nationalism. So those are the main causes of World War I. And remember, it's actually main causes of World War I. So go ahead and fill out the Google form for me that I posted below this video, and have a great day. Thanks.